Stories for Sarah, Part 5. Sarah, this is the story of a man named Lazarus who lived in Bethany, and he had two sisters, Mary and Martha, and they were all friends of Jesus. Jesus loved them, and Lazarus got sick. So Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, who was in another town, and said, "Can you please come? My brother is sick." And Jesus said, actually, your sickness, or Lazarus' sickness, will not lead to death. And he said it's actually for God's glory that he himself would be glorified through this. So he stayed where he was for 2 more days. And then he told his disciples, let's go to Judea. And his disciples were like, the Jews tried to kill you when we went through Judea the last time, and now you're trying to go back. And Jesus answered that if you walk in the light, you'll not stumble. So he must have known it was, God's will that he do this. And after he said this, he said, Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I'm going to go there to wake him up. And his disciples replied, well, if he sleeps, he'll get better. But Jesus was actually speaking about Lazarus' death, and his disciples thought he meant like actual sleep. So then Jesus told his disciples, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there so that you may believe. Now let us go to him. So Thomas, one of the disciples, didn't really understand what Jesus meant, and he said, let us go that we may die with him. So I think they were still thinking Jesus was talking like figuratively. So when Jesus arrived, he found out that Lazarus had actually been in the tomb for 4 days already dead. And many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in the death of their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. And Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And then Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And so Martha is also thinking he's talking figuratively, and she said, I know he will rise again on the day of resurrection. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He said, those who believe in me will live, though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. And Jesus asked her, do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who has come into the world. And after she said this, she went back and called Mary and said, the teacher is here, and he's asking for you. And so when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and she ran to Jesus. And when Mary reached the place where Jesus was, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. But when Jesus saw her crying, and he saw the Jews crying, he was deeply moved. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said, come and see, Lord. And then Jesus actually began to cry. And the Jews said, see how he loved him, talking about Lazarus. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? Jesus once more was deeply moved when he came to the tomb. And there was a stone lying in front of the tomb. And he actually said, take away the stone. And Martha said, but Lord, the sister, by the time, now there's a bad odor, for he's been there for 4 days. And then Jesus said, did I not tell you, if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And so they took away the stone. And Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I say this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe you have sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees, which were like the religious leaders, and told them what Jesus had done. And then they went on. The chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin, like the religious council. And they said, "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is the man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." And so then it goes on from there. But Lazarus was raised from the dead. And Sarah, I actually got to see his tomb when I was in Israel. I went to Bethany, and I got to walk down in his tomb. It's one of the few sites they're for sure about that was actually Lazarus's tomb. And I got to sit inside the tomb, so it was pretty amazing. Talk to you later. Until next time.